Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yeah, 21 Savage time. Shame it's not better. And this, it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. So here's the frustrating thing about the chart sometimes. I expected the 21 Savage album bomb to happen. It was pretty much the only thing on the docket, and we've got historical evidence that there is, somewhat counter to popular wisdom, a greater market for that sort of outburst in the holiday season, if only because of novelty. I referenced Kodak Black a couple of years back, and where I should have paid closer attention was that it really wasn't much of an album bomb in terms of pure chart success and entries. Impact, sure, but it would barely have qualified under my new rules, let alone the old ones, and that's also exactly what happened with this. In other words, this might wind up a little longer than I expected or predicted or wanted. Not the best time when I'm working on year-end list videos, but you gotta do with the frustrations you get. Thankfully, when we look at our top 10, there really isn't that much to say, especially as All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey continues to have an iron hold on that number one. Chalk it up to streaming yet again, which is also interestingly the case for Jingle Bell Rock by Bobby Helms up to number 2, where despite a slight lag on radio and sales behind Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee at number 3, the streaming was enough in order to get ahead. It seems to fall out in order of streaming this week, even if Last Christmas by Wham! At number 4 has that advantage on sales, especially for Santa Tell Me by Ariana Grande at number 5, who really has no consistent radio to speak of. But getting to the Christmas song by Nat King Cole at number 6, that extra bit of radio alongside streams is the edge it has over Underneath the Tree by Kelly Clarkson, which is coasting more on streams and a bit of sales at number 7. It's interesting, albeit not surprising, that radio is so stodgy about getting more modern Christmas music, and I can't really disagree. A lot of the newer stuff is way too plastic and overdone for my taste anyway. I'm kind of fine with that. Now the next two you can chalk up the streaming position: Let It Snow by Dean Martin at number 8, and It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year by Andy Williams at number 9. And the last non-Christmas entry we get here, The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift at number 10, where it's clinging onto that radio and streaming edge to keep itself from getting forced off. Naturally taking us to our losers and dropouts, where in the latter group, really not much to make note of, outside of Olivia Dean unfortunately losing some album cuts, alongside a Wish List by Taylor Swift finally getting forced off. Hell, we only have 3 losers this week, and I can't say I disagree with any of them. Darlin' by Chase Matthew mercifully continuing down to 99, Sugar on My Tongue by Tyler the Creator at 96, and that god-awful cover of Travelin' Soldier by Cody Johnson and his band at 91. Then for our returns and gains, well, we had none of the former, and the only gain came off the debut for I Thought I Saw Your Face Today by She and Him up to 74. I gotta hope it's just a bit of holiday nostalgia for this and we don't make it a thing, please. But no. What's going to take more time this week is our list of new arrivals, because 21 Savage fell right beneath my album bomb stipulations with 5 new songs. I guess since I have no interest in reviewing the album, this might give me a chance to weigh in. But before we get to all that, number 95, 4 Raws by EsDeeKid.
It's gonna make the occasion, so I manage this shit like I'm Jagan. Went from Henny to sipping on bacon. I switched to a different pace and cut to the chase, now they call me the sage. All over the net to my baby.
Wait, I've already covered this song. Why would I repeat myself here? Let's cut to that. Granted, my general view on being a late to upcoming hip-hop acts is a lot more flexible than it used to be. I don't really beat up on myself over it. Hell, sometimes I can be late to the party only to realize the party is come and gone and I'm actually not missing all that much. And especially when it comes to the more hype-driven, less lyrical acts that chart, it's hard to feel like I do miss that much. A lot of them come and go really quick. Anyway, EsDeeKid's out of the UK. He's got an anonymous gimmick that has some people thinking he could be Timothy Chalamet of all people. He's racked up some solid charting momentum and lukewarm reviews, with this being the debut track from his debut album, and can I say that I understand the appeal, but I'm not especially impressed. Part of this is the blown out mix where the bass just swamps out everything against the gauzy synth, and the weirdly underdeveloped percussion. It perpetually annoys me, especially these days, that some of these rappers don't realize that mix dynamics will work just as well live as the SoundCloud bass bass boost. But what's more exasperating is that this doesn't even feel as explosive as it really could be to match EsDeeKid's harsh accent and slightly gargled delivery. It's been a while since we've heard hard rhyming this stark on the charts, and yet when you pair it with a solid flow, I'm actually way more tolerant of this than I used to be. Maybe it's some residual fondness for Nelly growing up. He did this all the time. I wouldn't say that EsDeeKid's content leaves much to be desired, drinking hard liquor, smoking raws, with a slightly more innovative flair in his flexing. Did not expect for him to claim that he's from Mordor on the post-chorus, or how he used to fake being a girl to extort cash through e-tricking online. That's kinda wild. But it creates a much grimier and quasi-realistic picture of Liverpool slums and his dogged pursuit of the come-up. Although the switch from Hennessy, cognac to bourbon, it's probably what endeared him to me most, especially as Canadians don't get liquor from the States anymore, and I like bourbon. So yeah, this is decent. Not sure where the next step, where he's gonna take within this sound or how he's gonna build on it. I'm at least mostly intrigued. We'll have to see. Number 94, Chanel by Tyla.
Hey, say love me, you ain't put me Chanel. Hey, say love me, you ain't put me Chanel. Hey, say love me, you ain't put me Chanel. Hey, say love me, you ain't put me Chanel. Hey, say love me, you ain't put me Chanel. Say love me, put me Chanel.
The discourse around Tyla the past little while has felt very weird to me. Some of this is distinctly her own fault, with some public statements in and around her state of the genre and where she is within it that have landed not exactly well. But then apparently the K-pop label Hybe teamed up with her management to work on expanding their African presence in collaboration, and folks have been arguing whether or not that's a death sentence for her career or potentially a new opportunity. At any rate, this song has been charting worldwide since dropping in October, and it's pretty long overdue for that stateside crossover. And you know, on the one hand, I'm not surprised that this would eventually get there. This sort of patterning on a piano with a chalky knock around the wiry bass and spare melody, that would normally fit Tyla's sound, but the choral multi-tracking's been stripped away to have her as a more strident vocal presence, and I'm not really sure Tyla's got the charisma in order to sell that, especially when the vocal mix feels more compressed and sloppier than it should. The production as a whole feels significantly cheaper, and there is something about the sentiment that just lands awkwardly for me. I know that there's always been a certain element of I'm the hottest person in the room energy to Tyla's self-love, but the heavily repeated how can you say you love me, you ain't put me in Chanel feels both kind of petulant and a glorified advertisement for Chanel. Yeah, the groove's kind of good, and I know Tyla needed to diversify her sound off of that self-titled debut, which was really kind of one note. Even if I liked it, somehow I get the feeling that this isn't the way to do it. Can't say I'm a fan. Number 93, Dog Shit by 21 Savage and GloRilla.
Biker jacket, it's a 101 fast.
Keep it street, nigga tweak, I drop 100 bun. Ho ain't gon' fuck you with no money, better go get you some.
So again, we got 5 songs from 21 to get through here, and I did have some foreboding when I heard that the GloRilla collab of all things was one of the weaker songs on the album. I've been considerably less impressed with GloRilla this year compared to 2024, but she doesn't have to do much in order to deliver quality. This should work, right? Well, I'm not gonna say this song lives down to its title, even if the hook certainly does. I have no idea who thought it was a good idea to try to make Dog Shit sound cool off that intro, because there's nowhere near enough grit or intensity to make that work, but this feels like a collab that barely flatters anyone involved. The darker pianos and the crisp trap percussion is pretty well balanced, but 21 Savage opening up his verse talking about women sucking him off until they throw up, and then leaving girls from Notre Dame with hunchback asses. There's that corny side he can't quite escape. It utterly kills the vibe, and none of the opulence really has any appeal. But sadly, it is GloRilla who gives this song nothing to work with. Even with the ramp up of the beat on her verse, she just sounds disinterested. There's no intensity to the dead-eyed flex, where not even 21 is getting away with it. And it really exposes how hollow her verse is in stacking cash with the clunky references. It's not the worst thing either of them have been on, but I can certainly call it a disappointment, so yeah, I'm gonna skip it. Number 89, Stepbrothers by 21 Savage and Young Nudy.
Quit drinking, but I got some wild sales tuck. I'm a player, I can't pay no bitch to let me fuck. but I look out for her if she need a couple bucks.
I'm smart enough to not weigh in that much on street business when it comes to talking about acts like 21 Savage or Young Nudy. Part of the whole appeal has been that nascent sense of lurking danger behind desaturated flows that back up the gun bars by being that, well, real. But cuts like this leave me feeling that at some point you need to have a bit more than that in your anti-snitch song. Young Nudy's rasp, especially as the song darkens, it's somewhat effective, but he's a technically mediocre rapper who defaults to a lot of clunky paranoia in his run-on sentence flows and pretty basic content. And while 21 Savage is more crisp, he's not exactly adding anything new or unfamiliar alongside of very obvious raps and saying he got a girl pregnant off his pre-cum. Charming. I think a lot of the menace is being carried by that eerie synth alongside the stock trap percussion, but that minimalist progression always feels like it's a half step from being truly menacing, with only fragments of deeper sizzle and slightly clunkier bass mixing. I'm just not nearly as spooked as I feel I should be. Mostly because I've been hearing 21 play to this formula for damn near a decade with less intensity to show for it. So yeah, can't really say I care for this either. Next, number 86, Where You From by 21 Savage.
Shit like Vietnam, gun smoke in my lungs, stendos in them drums. You boys don't want a crumb. They come knock off your king, then turn around get your puns.
Okay, album opener, where amidst the barking dogs, we get some impressive gothic smolder with the churning synths, the creeping piano, and that fat bass courtesy of Wheezy and Southside that isn't as sharply mastered as it should be. As 21 runs through a series of street-level threats where the menace actually does feel pretty credible, until you get the lines where he's refusing to dignify conversations about Drake and his affiliates, and okay, well, I'm more conflicted than some might think. There was always a larger side of street-level violence to that whole beef last year than folks want to admit or acknowledge. Everyone has referenced it in their bars if you're paying attention. And if 21 is trying to balance some divided loyalties between Drake and Metro, he's probably got a front row seat to the nastiest of all of it. This feels a bit more visceral between the lines. Now, some of that is undercut by his venom at content creators, where he threatens to break their tech. I mean, there's enough circling around Drake's camp that you'd think he would excise quickly, or at least tell his bro that he should stop hanging out with Aiden Ross and XQC. But by the choppy interlude, I can imagine 21 would at least be more effective in dealing with them. So yeah, it's a little better than some of the others I've heard so far. I think it's decent. I'll stick up for this. Number 82, Turn the Lights On by KATO featuring John. I'm getting the alarming feeling that this 21 Savage album is not going to be nearly good enough to find more than just one decent song, so I'm now stuck looking at a dance cut from 2010. For those of you who don't know, KATO is a Danish DJ who did well enough in his home country 15 years ago, but never quite crossed over, with the singer John being John Norgaard, who broke out thanks to a reality TV competition in the early 2000s, and had a very sporadic album run across that decade. And look, he's fine. He's trying to infuse a little bit more soul into the vocals, but he's not exactly mastered or multi-tracked to sound loud enough to compete with the trance/Eurodance adjacent synthesizers and stock brittle percussion. I remember the club boom. These sorts of cuts were not only dime a dozen around that time and lyrically undercooked in this dance floor hookup, but if they achieved crossover, they rarely, if ever, lasted if they couldn't build a credible crescendo, and this really can't. Apparently this went viral on TikTok thanks to a meme with John Hamm of all people. Yeah, I barely get it too. I really hope it doesn't last. Ain't worth much. Number 77, Ha by 21 Savage.
Wow, 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 wow. 21, tear the pockets off a nigga jeans, bitch. And your steppers ain't gon' say a thing.
And now we're back to 21, where Zaytoven sucks any forward momentum out with a slower lumbering groove around a slightly more elegant but stodgy and clunkily mastered groove. Made all the worse when this is where 21 is trying to feature his most menacing gun bars, and they're alongside this painfully corny forced laugh on the hook. This sounds like something that he should have left in 2017. The flow is way more rudimentary and basic than it should be. Even before he starts saying that he's going to spank his ops, flops, that he rants that he can't trust women, and he's dissing rappers with no fans. The way you're going with this project, 21 Savage, you might not want to laugh or speak so quickly. And that's the other thing. He keeps mentioning steppers, which can be seen as a sub in a certain direction. It's not always that, but it certainly feels like it. And while he's the one loyalist that Drake has proven to have, nothing about this project is showing the sort of creativity that would make him a credible adversary on wax, especially as there was kind of a time when he might have been. So yeah, pretty lousy. And while we're talking about Drake, number 51, Mr. Recoup by 21 Savage and Drake.
My brother now I don't know who to trust. My odds be so broke that we been shooting at the bus. Bro say play it patient, nah dog, I'm in a rush, I'm trying to book.
So here's the problem with any street level conversation about Drake, because maybe it's the proximity in Toronto, but I actually think he's got more shooters than he's received credit. He's closer to that space with enough friends in certain places to get away with damn near everything. But if we're talking about business, especially in the music industry, calling himself Mr. Recoup might be one of the stupidest things I've heard in recent memory. Drake, the only people who are going to get the reference to recouping are those who know about record label contracts and read between the lines and making up that advance. And some of those people would know that in and around your beef with Universal is your bad contract bloated with stream trolling that shows you haven't learned shit. You're way less impressive than a boss, or do we have to run through the list of folks on OVO or Gamma who haven't seen the success they probably should have, and you probably haven't come nearly as close to recouping as you think. Pair that with a synth that sounds like a distended fart and a creepy piano that seems to be your excuse to rap down to 21 Savage's level, who has a little more to say, barely, than a bunch of Toronto-centric bars, and that line, Drake is your daddy and he couldn't find a sitter. 21, you sure this is who you want to be placing your allegiance alongside? Because this goddamn blows. And everything here is telling me that I made the right choice in not covering that 21 Savage album. Good riddance. And finally, number 22, FDO by Pooh Shiesty.
I just got out the bunk bed, 3 million cash, can't fit in my hand, then sit some on my head. Babe, come put that pussy on me, bitch, I'm fresh from out the feds. I say fresh from out the feds, baby, come put that pussy on me. Turned this fuck in the script club, ran out of one, start throwing hundreds. Nigga, I can't fumble shit, the whole world been waiting on it. Took that knife all the way to R&D, gave it to my little homie.
So it feels like there was a time when Pooh Shiesty had some serious commercial momentum that kind of evaporated from out of nowhere. I thought it was because he flamed out like so many in this scene in Lane, but turns out he actually went to prison on conspiracy charges and served 3 years, with this being his big first day out song where the hype does appear to be real. And after listening through the single verse that goes on well over 5 minutes, oh man, I don't know. The stock trap percussion around the slightly off piano line only seems to accentuate that Pooh Shiesty is a really clumsy rapper, where if he's not dropping out of the rhyme scheme altogether, he barely fits on the meter as he brags at length about his jail experiences, striking back at enemies, being paranoid, stacking cash, buying new brands and cars, and fucking and pimping women in increasingly degrading ways. The appeal is plainly in how over the top all this is, that he actually put it on the line, put in the time, backs up the menace. But it's not like we haven't heard damn near everything in this territory for years now, let alone since he went to jail in the first place. He's got bravado and a little tangible creativity in coming up with so many ridiculous brags, but without better technical construction and with no hook here, there's just very little replay value to me. I guess we can hope that now Pooh Shiesty's out, he might actually try to become a better rapper. The production is better than I thought it would be, but I also think he's got very little interest in doing so. I don't think his fans are going to hold him to that, and thus I have very little interest in hearing something I've heard so many times before. So yeah, I guess it's good he's out, but I ain't a fan. And that was our week. Good lord, this was rough. The last thing I wanted to work on when I'm in the middle of editing my year-end list with this. Thankfully, the best and worst fall out fast. The best, Where You From by 21 Savage, with 4 Raws by EsDeeKid as the honorable mention. Yes, I know I already covered it as a world hit a couple weeks ago. It's still better than the vast majority this week. And the worst, Mr. Recoup by 21 Savage and Drake is way too embarrassing to be overlooked for that bottom spot. But Ha is getting the dishonorable mention. I feel like on the hook alone. I just despise that. Next week, probably all this will be gone. We're gonna have a slower run of new arrivals, if any at all. Hope you all have a happy holidays while you stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you